This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
We'll talk today with Mike Irwin from Pig Trail Nation. Mike, always good to talk to you. We appreciate your time today here on a holiday. But I'm assuming you're working because Sam Pittman's talking right now, and I'll be listening later on. So it's a Labor Day for some people, but we're working and happy to do it.
Yeah, what he's saying was pretty predictable. One of the quotes was, "If something wasn't great last Saturday, let's fix it." So you got to fix something that wasn't great, which is good. I think the best thing he said so far, because people are talking about the 148 yards rushing Arkansas was limited to, Rocket just had 42 yards, and he said their game plan was to make us beat them with KJ throwing the football, which you did. So I think that's one of the reasons Dan Enos was brought in here, to give Arkansas an option when teams do that. I think if you go back in last year and look at some games Arkansas lost within specific drives where they bogged down too much running the ball, and then you run it 5 times in a row, you get a penalty. Now all of a sudden you're backed up on third down. You got to throw it. KJ didn't throw it well on 3rd and long, and you got to punt. So I think that's one of the reasons this passing game under Enos was brought in here, is to counter all that.
Mike, speaking of the passing game, how do you think the receivers did? What would you give the receivers grade after week 1?
Oh, yeah, I'd give them an A. I mean, you 3 of them, Armstrong, Wilson, and Tesla, I mean, all 3 of them had touchdowns, long touchdowns, 78, 83 yards, 60. Tesla's out there blocking on that first touchdown, so they looked really good. And there are other guys. One of the things about this football team, and not just at receiver, but a lot of these positions, I think you're going to hear different names different weeks. You're going to hear certain people mentioned this week, and next week it may be some other guys. And that's good when you have that kind of balance and that kind of depth.
Is there anything that Coach Pittman said about Brady Latham for the weekend? I think, well, you'd like to see your one or more experienced lineman getting back in there as early as possible. And I wonder if he could have played this past Saturday, but they just didn't want him to.
Well, he hasn't addressed it yet, but surely he will. That's the one thing. You end up with Tykees Crawford in there, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, but that's not one of your starters. So, that might have had something to do with it. But I think, again, more the running thing was they're lined up to stop what you do best, and you just throw them a curveball. You go, okay, you want to do that? Here's what we'll do. I like that. Of course, I'm a throw the football guy anyway. I'll take it over running any day of the week. When I watch football games on TV, I want to see the ball go up in the air.
Mike, speaking of the ball going in the air in our defense, they got stingy with 4 interceptions. Who impressed you on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, they all did in the secondary, and as a matter of fact, when you think back to August, I think all of us in the media were talking so much about that D-line and all the depth they had. People started making assumptions that we weren't mentioning the secondary, therefore they must be bad. And that was one of the things I was looking for. Now, again, you look at their passing numbers. They had over 200 yards passing. They had 18 first downs. They had more time of possession than Arkansas, so people are going to go, okay, there's a problem there. Well, there's not a problem there when you got 4 picks and a fumble recovery, 5 takeaways. And so that's what impresses me. When I watch games on television and they talk about a guy, a safety, a cornerback, a nickelback or whatever, I'm looking at a guy that can come up with the ball, not somebody who just knocks it away, because so many times you see a guy bat a ball out of bounds, oh, that was a great move, and then they come back and score on you in the next play. They can't do that if you take the ball away. So I like that. I like the fact that they had those 5 takeaways.
You think they get a better game from the opponent this weekend, from Kent State? The line is Arkansas is a heavier favorite this weekend than they were against Western Carolina. I know you're facing an FBS team. There'll be more scholarships. But I don't know how good Kent State is, because just looking at the numbers, and I watched a couple of plays of their game against UCF. There was no reason to watch anything more than that. It could get ugly again this Saturday.
Yeah, I think it might be even more lopsided. Arkansas is playing at home. I think they'll play a little bit better here than they did down there, just because I think you're just more comfortable at home. But I think they'll fine-tune some things, too. They've got some stuff to look at now. I think you'll probably see them run the ball more. I mean, I think Sam Pittman intentionally wanted to throw it more just to see what the effects of Enos working with KJ and these receivers. So you may see more running, and that if you're running the ball more, then you don't have chunk plays as much unless you break off some big ones. So I don't know, guys. You watch fans and they're judging games based on the score, and especially the first week. I read something a little while ago on the internet. I can't remember who put it up there, but it said, first game of the season, it's okay to make observations. In the media, it's not good to come to conclusions based on one game. And I think last night, the Florida State LSU game, too many people are coming to conclusions. Oh, Florida State's they're a contender for the national championship. LSU's dog meat. A lot of Razorback fans are now, I'm looking forward to that game. That doesn't mean LSU is bad. I mean, that was a close ball game until the fourth quarter. You could analyze what went wrong with them, but that doesn't mean they're a bad football team. It's just awful early to start coming to some of the conclusions that I'm reading when I read about all these football games.
Yeah, that was my point in the last segment talking to Cody about Colorado. And it's I wouldn't start telling everybody that you got receipts after one win. But, I mean, that is Deion being Deion, and it's a win that's worth celebrating. I'm not saying you don't celebrate your first win and your first game with your first Power 5 head coaching job, and it's on the road against the team that was the national runner-up the year before. But I'm never ready to anoint anybody a champion or the worst team in the country based on the first week. I don't want to. I'm not coming to any conclusions about Arkansas, and I won't until I start seeing them play against SEC teams. What did you think? How do you feel about week one? It's like it is the most overreaction week of any of the other 52 weeks in college sports, and I guess for good reason, because it's the only game we've seen.
Well, there's a natural tendency because now you've got something that you can talk about that is based on something you saw, as opposed to just, you're all through August, you're talking about stuff the media's telling you from this practice where they watch for 20 minutes or whatever. So it is real stuff, and you can see it, and that's good. But again, an observation is fine. Coming to long-term conclusions about after one game is, I don't care if fans do it. They can do whatever they want. I just don't like to see people in the media doing it.
Well, it's what we tend to do, I guess, every once in a while.
I mean, Florida State and LSU are both good teams. I could see both of those teams being ranked in the top 10 at the end of the season.
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't look at that game and I've read so much stuff about how bad LSU is. They got to fire their head coach and all that. I'm like, what? I mean, I saw some good things from them. I mean, their quarterback can make things happen. I mean, they scored right there at the end. I mean, come on. Some things can happen in a football game that may not happen, on a regular basis. You're assuming, okay, they're going to collapse every game in the fourth quarter. Well, that might be the only time they do that. We just don't know.
Florida State.
I was not unimpressed with them.
Yeah, Florida State's defense is real, and then that Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, I mean, they were just two targets that I don't know if there's any. This kind of looked like those LSU receivers a few years ago when Joe Burrow was throwing to them. I mean, who's going to cover those two guys?
Well, exactly, and then you go back to the fact that, first 2 years there, what were people saying about that situation at Florida State? Oh, they hired the wrong guy. We got to get another coach. We live in a fire the coach after one season mentality, and thankfully athletic directors don't do that. You read this stuff and you just want to laugh. I mean, there are people talking about Butch Jones getting fired right now. Well, he's not. And they're like, well, why isn't he fired? Because you just don't generally fire coaches one game into the season. I mean, Frank did it one time, but that's the only time I've ever heard of it happening.
I was about to say, I do know of one instance where that has happened, and it was right here.
that quarterback at OU's, I mean, that dude's good. He's a really good above average college quarterback. Gabriel, he can go, yeah.
How about a bounce back by OU? They were looking so bad last year, and man, what a turnaround. And then we haven't even said anything about Ole Miss. I was watching that game, and I'm like, whoa, that's a good football team.
I didn't get my eyes on them, Mike. Who was their starting quarterback?
I can't think of his name, but they've got two. They played two. They got one that throws and one that runs, and they can both do what they do well.
Sanders is the one who throws. Dart is the one who runs.
Okay.
I've got that in the preseason when I went through the schedule, Mike. I have Arkansas winning at Ole Miss. Do you think that's still a possibility here?
Well, again, it's one game. We'll see what they do next week. But of all the games I saw, and I was impressed with Bobby Petrino calling plays for A&M. That looked really good. But when I watched that Ole Miss game, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was watching one of those 4-in-1 things, on YouTube TV, which is great because you can sit there and kind of don't have to switch back and forth. And I was watching Ole Miss like that, and I was just like, my goodness. And they're good defensively too. So,
Mike, we got to get let's close on thoughts on War Memorial Stadium, which really sounded like, for us in the press, it was fine. But in the stands, it sounded like it was a fairly miserable experience for a lot of people that had to fight to get into the stadium. First had to fight to find their parking spots, ran out of water. It just didn't sound like a good experience overall. And for an area that wants to keep some games there, it wasn't a great showing to try to push that point.
I think anytime you do something once every 2 years, you're going to have an issue with it. Imagine if you opened up a restaurant. Like, when they open a new restaurant, they always have a free night where people come in and eat free because they want to see everybody place full and see how all the waiters and waitresses and people do things and their cooks and all that. And then you iron out all the problems. Well, you can't do that with War Memorial. You're just doing it once every. And I'm sure that they've got people that worked the last time that aren't working this time. So you're going to have issues. But based on what I was reading on social media, it sounds like it was worse. There were a lot of people that say they were War Memorial fans, keep the games there, and now they're saying no. And I personally think it's gone after 2 years. We'll see. But this didn't help. If you want to keep those games there, if you're somebody in Little Rock that wants those games to remain, this game did not help.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.